Hi, this is Kealy-ryder from Dating Talk with Kealy, and you're listening to Victims and Villains.
Welcome to the show where we talk nerd, we talk hope,
and speak nothing else. I'm your co-host, Mark Moore.
I'm your other co-host, Captain Nostalgia, and this is episode 341, where we are talking about dating, mental health, and the cult classic, Just Friends. Before we start our show, though, we are so excited to announce that we are giving away a few digital copies of the brand new movie Jungleland, starring Charlie Hunnam, Jack O'Connell, Jessica Barton, and Jonathan Majors. This gritty drama depicts the stories of two brothers up against a local crime boss as they attempt to bare-knuckle box their way towards redemption. And even if you guys don't win a copy, you guys can check this movie out this upcoming Tuesday, November 10th, 2020, on all major digital platforms. And to win a copy, all you have to do is simply follow us on Twitter and share your own friend zone experience. Winners will be announced November 15th. But speaking of friend zones and relationships, how are you doing tonight, Kealy?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. I am still a novice to your show, but when we were planning this, you were kind of the first person I thought of to be a guest on this episode because of just the context of your show and the podcast and just the wide array of guests that you have and experiences that you share on your show. For listeners that might not necessarily be familiar with your show, can you tell us a little bit about what Dating Talk is all about?
Yeah, so my show is a sex positive podcast that talks all about dating in today's world. So, I usually ask people about their best dates, their worst dates, their funniest sex encounters. We play some games like Never Have I Ever and stuff like that.
And so I feel like we talked about this on our relationships and mental health episode back in July. Relationships in particular, especially in today's day and age, have such a wide array of experiences, whether you're meeting in bars like the old-fashioned way or coffee clubs or movies or just grocery stores, different experiences, and then you bring into the account of this new age avalanche of dating apps, whether it is Twitter, Tinder, Bumble, and
Hinge.
Yes, I know it's your favorite, so I had to throw it out there.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I feel like I don't meet anybody in real life anymore.
Yeah, we meet everyone digitally. Like Mark and I have known each other for almost 2 years now, and we've never been in the same room as one another.
Oh my gosh.
Has it been 2 years?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't think it'd been that long. But I really have no concept of time, so yeah.
I don't think any of us do at this point.
Nah, it's what is time? Time is so relative. It feels like this year has just absolutely flown by. And one of the things that I noticed and recently did kind of doing research for this episode to kind of familiarize myself with your show is the fact that you took a pretty big hiatus this year with quarantine and then the Black Lives Matter movement happening in June. So how's 2020 impacted Dating Talk?
Yeah, I took a very long break. I, just felt like I wasn't in a good mental health space. And I also felt like as much as people need an escape, it's just not the right time to be talking about my dating life that's non-existent during COVID. And also, I just felt like it wasn't I'd rather boost women of color podcasts on my social medias and all of that kind of stuff, and just take a little bit of break. And now I just came back now that I'm feeling better and have done my part and educated myself and all of that kind of stuff.
That's so cool. Yeah. I don't know. I really respect that you were able to take a break back and focus on your own mental health and then kind of use that also as a way to showcase other creators, especially creators of color. And it just kind of seemed like that's where the shift needed to be this year in particular. And one of the other questions that I was going to actually ask was, it's always interesting to me when I come across podcasts where it's not inherently people just trying to like talk to like bigger acts like celebrities or talking about movies. It's always really interesting to come across podcasts that are friends just having conversations. And so I'm curious where the idea for not only a dating show, but just to kind of like talk to people that you knew kind of came from, and where the origin of that spawned from.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I mean, I like had listened to like Call Her Daddy and, like those big ones like Guys We Fucked and, these like dating or sex podcasts that always have like, famous comedians or just comedians in general. And I was like looking for a creative outlet for myself because I grew up dancing and singing. And now that I'm 32, like those things I do like in my room versus like, you know, um, out in the public or with an audience. So I was just like, you know what? I've been single for 7 or 8 years at this point. I know about dating. I'd like to learn from other people's dating lives. And I just figured I should just start with my friends and then just, ask like random people like how their dating life is, basically.
Yeah, so it's one of the very first episodes that I listened to. I don't really remember. It was a returning guest, and she had
Okay.
recently come out as a bisexual. And then the next episode that I listened to was like, oh yeah, we met each other on Facebook. So it's like it's cool to see that kind of like organic growth, and I like that also too that you're tackling these bigger issues. I almost messaged you after listening to the sex trafficking episode yesterday, which is a heavier topic and a heavier story to listen to than just people talking about the worst sex that they've ever had.
Yeah, definitely. I was so upset that the sound was so bad on that, but I was like, I have to put it up anyway because it's such a like important story.
It is. And I actually want to encourage people specifically, not only to listen to your podcast, but specifically to listen to that episode. So we're going to link that in the show notes for wherever you guys are currently listening to that. But where can people find more information and hear the show for themselves in full?
Yeah, so it's Dating Talk with Kealy. My name is spelled Kealy. And you can find me on pretty much all of the platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to your podcast. And then on Instagram, it's just Dating Talk with Kealy. And Twitter, it's Dating Talk with K.
All right. Well, I now need to follow you on Twitter. Cool. So I feel like this movie, Just Friends, that we're here to talk about, is got some bad raps. I know a lot of people that strongly hate this movie, and so Mark, when we were talking about doing this episode, I'm so glad that you turned me on to this, revisiting this movie, because I forgot how funny it was. But I want to kind of understand where everyone's coming from in terms of how you feel about this movie, whether you like it or whether you hate it, or whether you can quote it like I can, and probably Mark can as well. But Kealy, being our guest, where do you stand with Just Friends?
I enjoy the movie. It takes a lot for me to like really hate a movie. I think like obviously the premise has its problems, but like overall it's funny, it's enjoyable. Yeah, I enjoy it.
I'm a horror guy. It's very well known. And this is like romantic comedy, but the catch is it's Ryan Reynolds. And Ryan Reynolds is like my man crush. I've always loved Ryan Reynolds. And it's from his early career. Everybody knows him from Deadpool and The Hitman's Bodyguard and some of it, all of his new stuff. But his old stuff was just as good, and it just wasn't as big. And Just Friends had some great scenes in it, and it was just overall a funny movie.
I will go to my grave saying Ryan Reynolds in a fat suit, lip syncing the original TikTok superstar to I Swear has got to be one of the best movie openings of all time.
It's
and
great.
Credit scene. And the movie credits scene as well.
Maybe I didn't like sit through the credits long enough this past time when I watched it, but you sending me that video before we started recording of him doing the entire lip sync.
Yeah, that's from the credits.
So great. I was wondering why it was like so like weirdly like fuzzy and like edited ratio wise.
Yeah, it's like a little square box they pop up on the side of the screen, and then the credits run beside it in the black. That's probably wise, because somebody recorded it and then blew it up. But it's like one of the best credit scenes ever.
I also think that Anna Faris like really takes the cake for me for this movie. Like I think her scenes are the funniest for me.
So overall, everybody in the movie was just like over the top with their acting, except for Amy Smart. She was just like she always is. She does a decent job at everything she was in, but everybody else was just so over the top and dramatic. And Chris Marquette played the little brother. He did everything he could and kept up perfectly fine with Ryan Reynolds, and sarcasm, and the way he acted as the little brother was great.
You LA guys are so dramatic. What are you doing? This is a Grand Prix. I want to also kind of jump off of what Kealy was saying. Anna Faris in this movie, I think Ryan Reynolds gets a lot of hate for this movie with the fat suit because, like, to your credit, Mark, a lot of people don't give this movie a chance because it's not from the Deadpool era. But also at the same time, Anna Faris in this is just one of the best parts of this. I love her introduction where she's talking about being a vegan, and she's very much on like she's trying to portray she's on like a third world country, but she's very much in front of like a green screen, and the actors are like some of the most racist names, and she's like, and with my chicken cluck cluck, and it's like, no.
And I've never liked Anna Faris's movies ever. And it's just, I don't like her style, but this and Waiting are fantastic. And it's the way she interacts with Ryan Reynolds in both movies.
Yeah, I love the back and forth between Anna Faris and Ryan Reynolds in this. The tension that they create is just so perfect. The way that Ryan Reynolds is just this like very much down to earth guy, and Anna Faris is just a over the top, just as dumb as they come, bleach blonde. And the juxtaposition of those two character archetypes are just perfect comedy gold.
Oh yeah, the whole movie's just hilarious as a whole. I mean, you've got Chris Klein from the American Pie series is almost Ryan Reynolds' arch enemy in the movie. The way they go back and forth, they start off as like super geeks, maybe one step above the guy the nerds pick on, and then at the end of the movie, they're both studs fighting over the same girl.
Simply Dusty. Is there any other way?
Dinkelman. He's always Dinkelman.
He skates in his jeans.
I love that movie.
I'm way too familiar with this movie, and if we don't take a quick commercial break right now, I will end up quoting the poop out of this movie even more. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages. If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now, and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm,
or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us. How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victimsandvillains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victimsandvillains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Welcome back, and we've reached the spoiler portion of the show, talking about just friends and dating in general.
So I want to open this up, and I want to give listeners a flair for what they can expect when they check out Dating Talk with Kealy. And what is the worst date you guys have ever been on?
Well, so one time I was meeting this guy at like 7 or something. We met on an app, and he had texted me earlier on in the day, like, I might be running late. I'm helping a friend move. And I was like, that's fine. It's right by my job. I'll just like sit and have a beer. So it's like 7 o'clock, and then it's 7:15, and then it's 7:30. And I'm trying to decide, like, okay, when should I leave? Because he's not answering his phone. And I get a text from a random number that's like, hey, it's me. I'm still running late. My phone died. I'll be there soon. And I was like, okay. Now it's 7:45. And I'm like, okay, at 8, I'm just going to leave. Like, I can't deal with this. So in walks this guy, and he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Let me buy that beer. So I look at him, and I didn't even recognize him. I didn't think it was the guy I met on the app. So it wasn't like a full catfish. You could tell his pictures were from 10 years ago. Ooh. He had a lip ring I didn't know about, which, like, I don't care about that kind of stuff, but I want to know, like, what you look like. So I was like, okay, I'm going to stay for a beer with him, whatever, be nice. And he's like, I still have the U-Haul outside. Do you mind coming with me to return it? I go, no, I'm not trying to get murdered tonight. Thank you anyway.
What the hell?
And he goes, he goes, it's fine. My friend's in there too. Again, I'm not trying to get murdered tonight. Thank you anyway. So I just like bounce. I get on the train, I get off by subway, and I have a 1.5 minute voicemail from him where I think he might have been drunk. I'm not sure. But just like, you were so pretty. Like, I'm so sorry things didn't work out tonight. I would love another date, blah, 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 blah. And I think it was one of the only times in my life that I ghosted somebody.
Man, that's
They obviously they haven't seen Silence of the Lambs. Can you help me with this?
And I'm thinking in my head, if you're helping your friend move and he's still in the U-Haul, why isn't he taking the U-Haul?
That's a great question. From someone that's seen a lot of horror movies, that just sounds like the premise of like a serial killer.
Somebody's going to end up in a well with a bottle of lotion and told to put it on its skin.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how that story ends.
So crazy.
I've been married for the better part of 7 years, so I haven't actually dated anyone outside my wife for the better part of a decade. But when I was seriously dating, and I shared this in our Mean Girls episode, I'm such a cinephile that I have this tendency sometimes. I still do this with my wife, where if I'm like hyped and I'm like jacked for a movie, you don't exist. So I take this. This happened twice. I did it for Mean Girls and the Simpsons movie. I took this girl out and going to see movies that I wanted to see, not her. And we ended up getting there, and I was like, someone had just took some of like the Flash's like speed and just injected into my bloodstream, because I got out the car, I was in the ticket booth, purchased our tickets, and had purchased our snacks, and waiting by the ticket concession stand to go into the theater as she's walking into the theater. And if you know me personally, this is not the kind of guy that I normally am, because I'm the kind of guy that I want to walk in with you, conversate, make you laugh before you even go to the door. I'm going to hold the door open for you, and you're going to go in front of me. Like, I'm very much a gentleman in this regards, but I was a total tool this entire night. And when we got done, like, she was not a fan of like either one of those movies, both two different girls. And I just ended up like talking the entire night home and the entire rest of the weekend about specifically these two movies. And I'm pretty sure the girl that I took to Mean Girls broke up with me shortly thereafter. So I've seen better days, but I'm a much better dater now when I take my.
I also never do movie dates because it's like you can't like talk. Like, I'm more of like a sit down at a bar, have a drink, like talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like movie dates, I feel like are reserved for like couples that have been dating a long time. And
agreed.
The girl that I was dating when I took to Mean Girls, we had been together for a little over a year. And then the girl that I ended up taking to the Simpsons movie, I think we had been dating for a couple weeks at that point. But yeah, I agree. Like, if you're new into a relationship, you want to sit down and conversate. So you want to go out to dinner, you want to go out to a bar, you want to go out to a coffee shop, like you want to go out to walk around in a park. Like, the movies are, as much as I love them, they're some of the worst dates that you can have, because you're just sitting there experiencing this really good movie or really terrible movie, depending on what you're seeing, with this person, when you should be investing in getting to know them.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, see, Now, see, I get your point, but at the same time, it's like for your first date, take the girl to a swimming pool to make sure that like all that face isn't going to wash off. You take them to a movie to see the reaction or what movie they choose, so you know what you're getting into. Because you've always got the time before to go out to eat and talk, and afterwards discuss the movie. But if I'm going to go to a movie and I get forced to watch The Notebook, I'm going to be pretty pissed off. I'm not going to be happy on that date. But then again, I've been married going on 8 years now. So
Are you telling me that you don't cry at The Notebook like Dusty Lee? The Dusty Lee?
wow. No, I don't. No, I'm rooting for the nurses with the Vicodin.
That's so dark, Mark.
They make everybody's day better. Yeah,
I don't know about that. Because the pain just gets transferred from the grieving to the family. So it's
yeah, I guess you could be that way.
What's your worst dating experience?
So it's actually kind of funny because it was actually like the first real date with my wife. We went out and I had planned, there was this local like Irish restaurant, and I had been there like the week before with a friend. So I knew they were still there. And we'd planned to go see a movie afterwards. After we ate and hung out and stuff for a little while, we were going to go see the last Saw movie that came out in like 2010. Yeah, like I said, I'm the horror guy of the group. So we get over to where the restaurant is, and it's closed. I don't mean just like closed for the evening. They've closed up shop and gone. And I'd been there a week before. So neither one of us really like chain restaurants too much. And the only place we could get dinner at was Olive Garden. So we kind of had to half yell at each other through dinner because it was so loud. And by the time we got seated and ate and got out, the only thing playing at the theater was For the Colored Girls. So we ended up going back, and I had a copy of Kick-Ass, and we came back to her house and watched Kick-Ass, and both of us hadn't been in a relationship for a really long time or on dates. So we sat really stiff and awkward on like opposite ends of the couch because we like didn't know what to do. And watched Kick-Ass, and that was like 10 years ago. And somehow we ended up getting married. Yeah. She stuck around that long. So yeah, that's she loves it. She said she knows it. She could tell that I was just trying so hard and everything was going wrong, and I'm like, this is horrible.
Yeah, us women can tell.
Oh, that's rough, Mark. Throwing Nicholas, as much as I love Nicolas Cage, throwing him in there talking about how he's Big Daddy probably is not an instant mood changer.
It was awkward already as it was. So yeah, it probably couldn't get a whole lot worse than that.
So early in the movie, we find out that 10 years after this traumatic event that takes place with Chris Brander, Ryan Reynolds' character, he's like this big time Hollywood producer now, and he is like a womanizer, and like he's just so smooth with it. And there's a scene in particular where he is fixated on like explaining the friend zone and what it is, and he's talking to a friend that's got a quote day date, and he describes that particular notion as a expressway to the friend zone. And before we get really talking about the friend zone, how do you guys feel about day dates? Do you guys feel like they are hokey and that's an accurate depiction that they are express lanes to the friend zone, or that they're okay to have?
I mean, I never go on dates. I'm just not in the mood for a date during the day. I'd rather like have a brunch with friends or something. I don't know. I can't even tell you if I've even been on a date. Unless it was somebody, like I was seeing for a while, but yeah, it's not my thing.
I'm far too pale for the sun, so day dates just don't work for me. I don't blend with sunlight. I just burn.
I mean, it's better than sparkling, so.
It's better. Well, yeah, that's true. Stupid sparkling vampires.
So I've only been on a handful of dates, and they've all been with my wife. And at the time when we were
You're
dating,
obligated at that point.
No. So we were dating at this point, and I was on tour with the band I was in at the time, and we were coming through where she was staying because she was in college, and it was like the only time like our schedules aligned was to like get a quick meal. I think we ate like Pizza Hut of all places. So like not like super romantic, but I knew at that time like we both knew that we were gonna marry each other and stuff like that. So dates are weird. I like the way that you put it, Kealy, talking about it's like going out to like lunch, going out to brunch with like friends and just kind of like having it like a more chill kind of time because it almost kind of feels like the night awakens like a completely different beast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, most everybody goes on a date in the evening, but a lot of times it's they come home from work and change and run back out. I don't know how much that plays into it, but that's just kind of the way events usually take place with going on dates, or at least they have for me.
I feel like too there's a lot of different factors that factor into that. Like Kealy. So since you're the main one of us that on this podcast that is dating at the moment, like what do you do if a guy like you match with a guy on Hinge and you really like him, but you guys kind of like work like opposite schedules to where like he works overnights and like the only real time that you guys could like do anything during would be like day dates. Like what do you do in those types of situations?
I don't know. I don't think I've had that type of situation. But I mean, I would be fine. I would just go on the date, and like see how it went. Um, yeah, I mean, it would be fine. I just wouldn't be like I would try to find a night where we could make it work before I did the date.
That's fair because like day dates kind of seem like unless you're married, they kind of seem like last resort kind of thing. So like where do we reach? Like does it feel as a unanimous group like that it is an express lane to the friend zone, or is it just kind of like awkward dating ground?
I think just awkward. I feel like you're gonna friend zone somebody even if you feel like it's going, how do I describe it? Like if it's gonna be a friend zone, right away whether it's day, night, or not.
That's a good way to put it. So I guess like that kind of leads into my next question when talking about this. I feel like I've had my fair share of moments in dating before I got married where like I'd go out with a girl and thought things were going really well, and then you get that famous line that Chris gets at the beginning of it, I love you like a brother, or I love you like a sister. And so then all your hopes and dreams are kind of crushed with that person. Like what would you say kind of constitutes understanding and defining the friend zone?
It's hard for me because I feel like I don't really friend zone people because like I don't really have that many straight male friends. So if I'm like seeing somebody, I'm not going to say, "Oh, let's just be friends." I'm going to say, "This was really great. I don't see a romantic connection. Wish you all the best." So it's kind of hard to answer that just from my perspective because I'm trying to think if I've ever been friend zoned.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You hear guys talking about being friend zoned all the time. Do girls actually get friend zoned?
I haven't, but yeah, and I don't think I can't think of any of my girlfriends that have either.
I friend zoned a girl in high school. I can say that. It was
So you're the friggin' unicorn.
it was freaking awkward for our relationship moving forward.
And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's plenty of women that have been. I just can't think of a scenario that I know about personally.
And
I think I did once by accident because I thought she was joking when she asked me out. Yeah, that was weird.
I think though it also, I think we all kind of come from these different walks of life and view dating in different terminologies, and a lot of the principles that I grew up around were in a religious home, so a lot of those principles got enacted in me. And the best way that I've ever heard dating put is, I mean, it's from a religious standpoint, and I know that there's going to be listeners that don't necessarily agree with this, but it kind of changed my perspective as a person to where, you when you look at someone as a potential partner for dating, you want to see an answer: is this a person that I could see myself spending the rest of my life with? And marriage, it's not going to be for everyone. But, could I see myself spending the foreseeable future, whether that's 1 month to a year, with this person? I feel like that's kind of, to go off of what you were saying, Kealy, I feel like that's kind of what really, determines friend zone, whether it doesn't matter what time of day you're dating that person. It's, do I see myself investing a great deal of time into this? Because, we talked about worst dates ever, and I'm sure that, we all have stories more than just what we've shared on this episode that can make up an entire podcast on worst dates ever. But it's kind of like the wedding singer, finding someone that you want to grow old with, essentially.
Yeah, I also think nowadays, instead of friend zoning, people have fuck buddies.
Yeah.
Like, that's the new friend zone, I think.
Or friends with benefits too.
Yeah.
Had a lot of those before I was married, so I mean, they're good to kind of satisfy those like surface needs, but when you want to have I feel like a deeper connection with someone, then you want to kind of step out of that zone and step into like a authentic relationship with someone.
Exactly.
So, like, I'm older than y'all. This has been brought up with me and Josh, and we joke about the fact that I'm the old fart of the group. Now, when I started dating, it was in the mid-90s, to give you an idea. And we didn't have, like, the apps and everything. We had to actually go and talk to people and form a relationship that way. We didn't have, oh, they look good, let me swipe this direction and let's hook up. So I think that played a part in how I viewed things later, because you had to actually form some sort of connection enough, at least, to get the interest to go out. Didn't have the instant kind of gratification that the apps give you now, where you see somebody, you think they look good, and y'all start texting and then go out, and that's it. So.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I try not to talk on the app too much. I'm usually a person who says, you have a little bit of banter back and forth. And then I usually, if they don't suggest hanging out, I'll just do it, because I'd rather meet in person instead of like texting back and forth for days.
Yeah, because texting doesn't have any sort of emotion or character to it really at all. A lot of that's left out. You don't get that kind of body read, body language, connotation and everything from a text that you would meeting somebody in person.
Absolutely.
I think to a degree, and I think it's gonna depend on the person too. Because when we did dating and when we did relationships and mental health a couple months ago, this is the second time in this episode that I've mentioned that particular episode, so I will link that in the descriptions if you guys haven't checked that out, because I think it's a great companion episode for this episode. One of the things that he had kind of talked about was sharing, dating more modernly through the apps like Tinder and Hinge, to where I feel like to a degree it's going to depend on the person as well. Because I know that my brother-in-law, who's getting ready to be married next year, like he met his wife-to-be on Tinder, and they texted, like they matched and just like texted for like a week or two before they actually met up. And so I think it just depends on the person as well, because texting to a certain degree can create that same kind of connection, but it's almost like solidified when it's in person.
Yes, I agree. I do think it depends on the person. I have a lot of friends that would rather text for a while before meeting up, but I personally don't want to have great texts with you and feel like I know you and then get in person and be disappointed or bored or feel no connection I'd rather know right away.
Well, so maybe I'm just kind of reading into this. Does the texting portion of the modern day apps and dating feel almost kind of like a job interview, and then once you meet them in person, it feels like it's like a follow-up interview? Does that make sense? Does that analogy work?
I think maybe for some people, for sure. And I think it just depends on your conversation, because sometimes the conversations can be great and interesting, and then some of them can feel like a job interview where it's so where are you from? What do you do? Just the same questions over and over again. But you do get those dates where, you end up talking about how much I love Lady Gaga for an hour and, or something.
But at the same time, do you find that through texting, you build up an idea of what you think that person ends up, how they're going to be, as opposed to when you finally meet them, they don't meet that expectation because you've seen a picture, you've got an idea of who they could possibly be through text and formed an image, and then you meet them and they don't meet that expectation. Do you find that happens?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I feel like some people are better with their words in writing, so they can be really, really funny through text. And then you meet up and you're not laughing at all. And you're like, oh man, I thought this guy was, going to make me laugh and I was going to laugh all night, or.
Yeah. I guess for me, my wife and we met at a concert venue. I was moving through on tour, and she messaged my Facebook band at the time, and so we started texting, and then texting led to calling, and I want to say we texted probably for 6 months before we ever had a serious first date. And so I think it again, to kind of echo everyone, it depends on the person. But kind of coming back into the notion of awkward dates, there's a scene in Just Friends where Chris and Amy go out on a day date for lunch, and it does not go so well. It ends with Chris trying to go in for a kiss, and she goes in for a hug. It ends in a full body shake. What is the most awkward ending to a date for you guys?
Well, I went on a date that was just awkward in general from start to finish. I didn't like his politics, so that was just right off the bat, just terrible. He said some things that embarrassed me in front of the waiter. So I just like cut it short, and we were both walking to the same subway. So it was like, you can't really get out of that. And I literally said to him like, oh, this isn't going to work out, because of this and that. We get down to the subway and he goes in for a kiss. And our lips touched because I was so taken back that I think I just was just like standing still almost. And yeah, he like kissed and I was like, oh, and I think I said like, well, that was awkward, and just like went the other direction or something. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I already shared my awkwardness. So
I
and
don't
she
think
stuck around. So yeah.
I don't think that I've ever had a experience as awkward as Chris or as awkward as Kealy.
Wait, no, I thought of one. I got one for you.
Lay it on me.
So it becomes interesting having to explain the first time why some of my best friends are ex-girlfriends. That becomes an interesting conversation for a little bit, because we don't know why this happens with me, but a couple of my best friends are actually ex-girlfriends.
That's already awkward.
You'd think so. Just the first after that, they're like, well, okay. Like, my wife has actually sent me out with my ex to go see movies that she really didn't want to see. So I've gone to the movies and stuff with one of my best friends, but she also happens to be an ex-girlfriend that I've known for 20 years. So yeah, we went and saw Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F because my wife really didn't want to. So she called up my ex, can you go with him and take one for the team on this? Because I really don't like anime. But it's just having to have that conversation. Yeah, we dated for a while and now we're just friends. That could be a little awkward.
Yeah, your wife is a true keeper. I guess on that note, I can share an awkward story that I just thought of as soon as you started talking about that. I had a girl that was friends. I guess we went on a couple dates. We made out a little bit. It wasn't super into the realm of friends with benefits quite yet, but we hadn't had the DTR talk. And so when we did, we just kind of ended up going separate ways. And well, anyways, one day she just kind of messaged me out of the blue. And at this point, I'd been married for 4 years, I want to say. And she's like, hey, I run a LuLaRoe clothing store, and I'm going to be near you between this time frame, and I would like to do a fundraiser for victims and villains. So I was like, okay, that's not awkward at all. So my wife didn't know about the history between me and this girl. And so of course, when I told her about the offer, she was like, okay, that sounds awesome. How do you know this girl? And so then you have to kind of be like, oh yeah, we went on a couple dates, made out a couple times, and I ended up having to actually leave both of them alone and go to work. And then reporting back, it was my wife said it was one of the most awkward experiences in our relationship, if not her entire life. So I understand taking one for the team, Mark.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I mean, me and my brother went and helped her move a treadmill into her house 2 or 3 weeks ago while my wife was at work. So she's just kind of been adopted by my family as an ex-girlfriend. It is what it is.
Like the sister you didn't know you needed until it just happened that way.
Yeah, and she's just as sarcastic and blunt and straightforward as I am. So we get to joking back and forth, and my brother just sits there falling out in the ground laughing.
So I feel like too. So we're watching this journey of Chris Brander going from Hollywood big shot to trying to use that as a catalyst to create this relationship with Jamie Palomino, and then when she doesn't take to that, he digs into the Michael Bolton starter kit and goes to watch The Notebook and creates, these lists of 100 reasons why Jamie Palomino is the best, and he's just trying to like butter this girl up, like it's like Lifetime on steroids. And
so I think the list was actually from when he was in high school.
It was. And side note, I did that to many girls when I was in high school. Super cheesy. But you kind of see this like entire thing, and then he gets to the end of the movie and he's just worn out from like attempting to like try and be the person that he thinks Jamie wants him to be, instead of just kind of being for himself and going for it. We all come from 3 different walks of life, as we've established on this episode. How has your dating journey affected your mental health?
I don't know. I mean, I definitely talk about dating in therapy a lot, but I also feel like I'm pretty relaxed about my dating life. Like, I'm fine on my own and quite enjoy being alone. So I'm not necessarily like stressed out about when I'll find the one and if I'll have kids and if I'll get married. I'm kind of like, if it happens, it happens.
Nice.
So yeah, I don't feel too much like anxiety or stress because of dating, besides like maybe safety precautions.
Yes.
Stay out of U-Haul.
That, and I won't give it away, there are some truly weird stories on her podcast. So just, again, links in the show notes to understand the more perverse side of safety precautions on that end. I feel like for me, though, dating before my wife, I was just like going out and I was like trying to be all about me, and I was like very self-centered and very, very focused on my needs, and just kind of doing and saying really anything that I could to either get a chick to like fool around with me or to like be my girlfriend. And then I had this kind of like epiphany of like how empty something like that is. And I actually ended up spending about a year and a half kind of working on my own mental health and my own just viewpoints for what I believed in as an individual, both mentally, physically, spiritually, and all of us after the loss of a friend to suicide. So throwing all of that stuff in the mix, and then meeting my wife was kind of like this game changer, to where I understood how to kind of love someone both intimately, emotionally, and physically, and to put their needs, and how satisfying that felt, and kind of brought a new light to my mental health, and really ways that I didn't know that I was missing before her.
So I've always been, for about as long as I can remember, very straightforward and honest, almost to a fault. I don't see the need to hide things, because somebody's going to find out later. And it hasn't always worked out well. And it's just with dating your first little while in a new relationship, you're so busy trying to get the person to like you that they don't see who you are. And you're kind of hiding those little quirks and stuff. And then later out on the road, they start coming out. And it depends on how you deal with each other on how long the relationship goes, if these quirks are deal breakers or not. And I'm the kind of person that's just kind of very blunt and honest and sarcastic. And some people just can't deal with it, to the point that even my friends, they say the same thing, that the people either really like me or they can't stand me. There's no in between. And it was like that with dating too, because I really don't see the need to be any different other than more considerate of who I'm dating, obviously, or in this case, married to. But that's just how I've always been. You pick up little things from other people here and there, but on the mental health side, for me, it's just always been really looking at things realistically and figuring out, is it worth my time to deal with some of these issues that some people come with, or even in my case, my own issues. Do I need to deal with these for other people? And that's just kind of where it all fell for me.
I feel like transparency is almost a foundational quality that you have to have in a relationship, whether that's in a friendship or dating or someone that you've placed in the friend zone. I think that relationships come in all shapes and sizes, but if you really are serious about that relationship, we've talked a lot about dating on this episode, but relationships,
married guys,
relationships come in all shapes and sizes. Whether you prefer to be alone, like Kealy, or you're married like Mark and me, or you're friends like Mark and me, or they come in a different shapes and sizes, or Ray. They come in a plethora, a cornucopia. And one of the things that Chris says he says to Samantha at the end of the movie, he says, you can't force someone or torture them into liking you. You just have to put yourself out there and hope that they like you back. It's not a game. This is my life. And it's one of the more profound things I feel like this movie speaks on. And I have you guys ever changed for a person, and how did that end up affecting your mental health and that relationship?
I don't think I've ever changed for anything or anybody. I mean, if you ask my friends, they'll say Kealy is the one person that never changes, especially the ones that have known me since I was a child. And my parents say that as well. So I don't think I have experience on changing for somebody, really.
So the only time I change is if I decide it's in my best interest overall. And I have an ex-wife also, and there were a lot of issues there that she wanted me to change everything after we got married. And I tried, and it made me miserable. And it was part of the reason that I ultimately decided close to the end and stuck with it after, that I'm not changing for nobody unless I decide that it's in my best interest overall. It's not going to happen. So it made me stubborn. It really did, because I have to come to that determination myself. I can't come up and say, you need to change this because of this. I have to kind of figure it out and really figure out that, yeah, this is in my best interest to change this and for these reasons. So that's the only time that I've ever really changed or decided to change.
I feel like I echo you a lot, is that I was at a point in my life when I was dating very severely, where I was changing myself to be the metamorphosis of the quote unquote Prince Charming that they wanted me to be. I had a couple months where I was dating a girl. I was like Nickelback's #1 fan because of her. I dated a girl that I wouldn't watch horror movies for. I dated girls where I wouldn't watch The Simpsons, which if you listeners, if you know me by now, I thrive on horror movies and The Simpsons. But during that weird point in my life where I kind of gave up dating and really had to focus on myself, I decided kind of that same thing, Mark, initially, where I was like, all right, when I finally do start beginning to date again, this is the person that I am now. I'm going to be this person. And I mean, being married, I really haven't changed a whole lot. If I've changed, it's been to more mature, but I'm still a kid at heart. I'm sitting in my office right now and I have a plethora of pop culture around me, and I still surround myself with things that belong in a 13-year-old boy's bedroom. But that's cool because that's just the nerd I am. But it's not worth it. It's not worth your mental health to change someone, because if you're going to consistently change for everyone else, A, you lose your identity, and B, you don't have a sense of either worth, value, or any more than you do what actually constitutes as your mental health.
If you're changing for somebody else, you're finding your self-worth in the other person's opinion, which is never really good for you as a person to be.
Look at Chris Brander. I mean, Chris Brander was trying to be Michael Bolton Jr. and couldn't compete with Dusty Dinkelman. I mean, this is Chris Brander. He's from Hollywood. Well, he dates models.
He changed his approach. Almost every time he went out with Jamie. At one point, he was showing off being the music exec, he was name dropping all these different musicians and all that, and that didn't really go over well. Then the next date, he decided he was going to be super sensitive and the Michael Bolton starter kit, and that didn't work either. It wasn't till he actually decided to be him that things started to work.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I mean, that's a journey that we consistently see on. I feel like that's one of the reasons why I consistently come back to this movie, and the older I get, it's no more nostalgia for me than say something like Batman or Robin. But at the same time, this movie for me almost feels semi-autobiographical, because I took that approach to dating back in the day. I changed so much that my self-worth and my self-value were integrated into that other person's behaviors and interest and political views and religious views, all of that stuff. I'm pretty sure that I got so, after probably 3 or 4 years of doing that, I got so wrapped up into that I didn't even really know who I was anymore. And that's a bad place to be in, mentally speaking, because depression becomes very real in that point. And also, for me, when I had a breakup occur, it was almost always apocalyptic. It felt like, but there was one breakup in particular that I had a girl that dumb being 16 and being like, oh, this is the girl that I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with. I'm not sure if either one of you guys have ever had that with someone, but I was convinced, like, hell could show up tomorrow, and I was convinced I was gonna date this girl for the rest of my days, and she ended up cheating on me, and it was kind of the linchpin that I had going on with all of my family issues at the same time, where I was like, I'm gonna end my life and I'm gonna blame this girl because of it. And it's because I had so much stock and so much self-worth tied up into her identity that I didn't have any of my own.
Yeah, and that's just, not healthy for anybody involved.
No. And I mean, at that point, like, I just want to encourage anyone that might be hearing that right now to please consider the links in the descriptions for our suicide prevention resources, because this is the reason we make this content. We make it so that you listening to this can understand your value and your worth as a human being, as an individual, that it's not tied up in anything else that anyone else is doing, whether it's friends, significant others, or potential crushes. Like, you have to worry about your self-worth and your mental health first and foremost. So please consider the links in the descriptions. I think that's actually going to do it for us on this episode of Victims and Villains. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please, if you guys want to more dating podcasts in your life, where can people find Dating Talk with Kealy?
Dating Talk with Kealy is on pretty much all the podcast, platforms, Spotify, Apple, all of that. My Instagram is Dating Talk with Kealy, Kealy, and my Twitter is Dating Talk with K. And thank you guys for having me.
Thank you so much. And of course, we always appreciate the insight of a lady, especially one that specializes in dating podcasts, because that's not a thing that either one of us are too familiar with, I guess, the female mind or modern dating.
Yeah, not at all.
Well, you guys can find us everywhere at Victims and Villains. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, Letterboxd, wherever you guys get your podcasts from. And you guys can also go to victimsandvillains.net, where you guys can find access to all of our social media, all of our past episodes, and most importantly, our suicide prevention resources. And until next time, remember to keep talking nerd, talking hope, speaking nothing else. Cue Ryan Reynolds in the fat suit.